Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we're going to be discussing my favorite books of all time. I have a list here of every book that is on my shelf that I love. I do have them separated into different genres just because as a reader I have my preferences, and so depending on the genre I rate books a little bit differently just because I have different things that I'm looking for in that certain genre. But these are just books that I love so much, and in honor I'm wearing my Terrason sweatshirt just because, as you'll see, I have a lot to say about Throne of Glass, but I don't want to spoil it too much. So let's get right into the first genre, which is going to be romance. First up in romance, if you could kind of even categorize this book as that, but this is a series, and this is the Magnolia Park series. I started this series after seeing a lot of buzz about it a couple years ago, probably in 2023. I knew it was kind of like a Gossip Girl set in high society London where the characters were very toxic, and honestly, I haven't seen Gossip Girl, but just think a very toxic story about a group of friends in high society London, and it kind of is a romance in a sense. But do not go into this series expecting a typical romance. It is very just kind of a love story between different couples. You'll see if you don't like toxic, you might not like this series. There are just some quotes in this series that is just so beautifully written, and I still think about them to this day. I absolutely love this series so much. I am currently reading The Conditions of Will, which is also by Jessa Hastings, the author of Magnolia Parks. The Magnolia Parks series kind of is between two different characters. So there's the Magnolia Parks, but then there's also Daisy Hates as well. So in this whole kind of universe, you read the first Magnolia Parks book, and then you read the first Daisy Hates book, then the second Magnolia Parks book, and then the second Daisy Hates book, and then there's the third Magnolia Parks book, just the latest book that is released in this series, which I think came out last year. I will say that the latest Magnolia Parks book, which is Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, I did not like that one, but the first two and then the first two Daisy Hates books I really enjoyed. Next up is The X-Files by Jessica Joyce. This is actually a book that I read last year in a reading vlog, so if you want to see my real-time reactions to that, I can always link it down below. Basically, The X-Files is a second chance romance book that basically follows our two main characters, Georgia and Eli. They are a part of this friend group, and their one friend is getting married, and they are both a part of the wedding party, and just a lot of things are going wrong in this wedding, and so they basically have to go to the venue earlier and try to basically save the wedding. However, they haven't really talked just because they are broken up, and so basically it just follows them kind of rekindling and seeing the growth that the other has gone through since they have broken up. Personally, second chance romance is not one of my favorite tropes just because I feel like a lot of the times you really never get to see any growth the characters have gone through. However, in this one, I think that the growth the two characters have gone through was really clear to see to readers and to the other, and I just think it was such a sweet and lovely story. Highly recommend if you like a second chance romance. Next is Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. If you like a romance between two musicians, this might definitely be up your alley. Our two main characters in this are, I believe, cellists, violinists. I just really enjoyed getting to see the kind of connection and kind of romance that spurred over both characters' love and passion for creating music. I just think it was very interesting and unique to read about. This is, I will say, Reylo fanfiction that was traditionally published, I'm pretty sure, so think Adam Driver as the main male character, kind of. Next up is kind of a series, but I have two books specifically a part of this series that I love, and that is the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. This whole series is an interconnected standalone series. Each book follows a different brother, a part of this family. They are all kind of cowboy romances involving bull riders, ranchers, there's one hockey player, so you kind of get a little bit of everything in this. But more specifically, my favorites from the series are Heartless and Reckless. Heartless follows Kate and Willa, and she is originally his nanny. He's a single dad, and so you get to see her relationship with his kids and kind of the growth of that, and I thought that was really sweet. Reckless is actually an accidental pregnancy between the main character from the first standalone sister and then also the first male main character from the first book. He's kind of like this character's mentor, but that one is definitely my favorite out of the whole series. I just absolutely loved it so much. I read it in December, I believe, and I enjoyed every single second of it. There was not one part of that book that I didn't like. Every single aspect. loved. Next up is kind of another author mention, but I have some specific books from her that I really, really love, and that is Emily Henry. I enjoy all of Emily Henry's books, minus Happy Place. But more specifically, my two favorite books from her were Beach Read and Funny Story. Both of these are definitely more on the rom-commier type of genre. Beach Read follows two authors, January and Gus, and they basically swap genres when they're in a writing slump, and so you basically just kind of get to see them go on these little dates to kind of inspire the other for their specific genre that they're writing about. But I also would say it is pretty emotional with some of the things that our main character is going through with the loss of a parent, and so you just kind of see that as well. And I cried at the end of Beach Read when I first read it. I thought it was very, very sad, but I highly, highly recommend that one. And also Funny Story from her is one that I read last year when it came out, and I reread it this year, and I gave it 5 stars when I read it this year. It definitely is kind of heavy on that kind of comedy aspect where there's a lot of irony. Our main character Daphne is engaged to Peter, and then our main male character Miles is engaged to Petra. Petra and Peter are childhood best friends. When Peter goes on his bachelor trip, Petra goes with, and they decide that they are actually in love. They both leave their respective partners, and now Daphne and Miles are kind of in this situation where they're living together. They fake date a little bit, but you basically just kind of get to see them spark a relationship, and I just absolutely loved Funny Story so much. Great Big Beautiful Life is coming out next week as I'm filming this, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited to read that. I have another kind of honorable mention for an author, and that is Ali Hazelwood. I love all of her books. Deep End I wasn't too crazy about, but her Women in STEM series I really, really enjoyed, more specifically Love Theoretically. And then I also really enjoyed her YA book, which was Check and Mate. I know there was some discourse among people not really enjoying that book, but personally I just love reading about chess, and I just remember really, really enjoying Check and Mate. Next up, I'm going to be talking about all of my favorite fantasy books. First of all, I have to, of course, talk about Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass is my all-time favorite, probably book series and books ever. If you were to ask me what my favorite book was, I would definitely say the Throne of Glass series. So much so I have my Terrasen sweatshirt. I have a Terrasen phone case, which is also so cute. It's from Etsy, but I just absolutely love this. And I just love Throne of Glass so, so much. I read this for the first time it was either like 8th grade to freshman year of high school. I can't remember which exactly it was, but I am now 21, and that is still my favorite books ever. Throne of Glass starts out as just a book about an assassin, and she is basically fighting for survival in this kind of competition to become the king's champion. But by the end of the book series, it is something so completely different, so heart-wrenching, and just a beautiful story that I think really emphasizes how small acts of kindness really do make such an impact on your life and on the people's lives around you. Truly, it's such an amazing story. I love all of those books, but I would definitely say that my favorite book is Queen of Shadows, which is so funny because when I first read Queen of Shadows, I wrote in my review on Goodreads in like 2018 that I thought the beginning was a little bit boring, and when I reread it last year, I couldn't believe that I wrote that because it truly altered my brain chemistry. And thinking about the storyline of Throne of Glass and the whole series and everything that these characters go through, I could cry. Like, genuinely, I love this series so much. Sarah J Maas really did such an amazing job at writing these stories and writing these characters and just making you love the characters and really feel for them. Let me not talk about this forever, but basically the overall point of this story is just for me to say, please read Throne of Glass. It's amazing. That's all I have to say, thank you. Next up is actually another series that I read in middle school that I reread in 2023, I believe, but that is the Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a, I believe, YA 4-book series, and it follows our 4 to 5 main characters. The group of boys that it follows are kind of the Raven Boys. They basically go to this very expensive private school in this town in Virginia, and they meet this girl who is the daughter of a psychic, and the group of boys is on a journey to find a dead Welsh king. The whole series kind of just follows them trying to find this king and all the supernatural things that go on within this town. For it being a YA series, I genuinely think that it is such an amazing series. I love it so much. I love these characters. It is funny. It's so nostalgic for me to read this, which is maybe why I enjoy it so much, but genuinely love the characters. I love the story. It's interesting pretty much throughout. I just think it is a very well written, very interesting series. Next up is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. I read this book last year for the first time and I absolutely loved it. This basically follows kind of a witch and a witch hunter. Witches are basically kind of outlawed in this world that you are in, and our main character Rune is a witch and she is trying to save other witches that are caught. Our main male character Gideon is kind of trying to find out who this mysterious witch is that is saving these other witches. It's a whole kind of cat and mouse back and forth between the two of them. It is a duology. The second book just came out this year, which I also really enjoyed. I loved both of these books so much. I would very highly recommend. Next up, of course, I have to mention the Hunger Games series, but more specifically, I want to mention Sunrise on the Reaping. I absolutely was heartbroken to read this. This book is very cruel. You really just get to see all of the terrible things that occur leading up to the actual main Hunger Games trilogy. I was so disturbed at some points throughout this, but it's such an amazing installment and prequel. I didn't really care for the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and so Sunrise on the Reaping, I really enjoyed it. I also will kind of do an honorable mention of the ACOTAR series. I definitely prefer Throne of Glass to ACOTAR, but if you don't know, the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which are right here behind me, are very popular. I read them before I read Throne of Glass, but I just like the story of Throne of Glass a little bit more. I still really love ACOTAR. My favorite book is definitely A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the last book in that kind of initial trilogy of the three. Honorable mention, I love them. I love the characters, but I like Throne of Glass more. Next up, I'm going to be talking about some fiction books that I really love. Of course, I feel like I have also talked about this book a lot on my channel, so I don't want to say too much about it. That is Kate and Frida by Kim Fay. I just read this book not long ago. The whole book is just a series of letters between two friends. This book kind of focuses on being a woman in your 20s and kind of the relationships that you can form over food and books, and I just really enjoyed getting to read this. I think it was such a beautiful story and I highly recommend. I don't want to talk too much about it. I feel like I've already said so much about it on this channel. One of my favorite kind of fiction, women's fiction authors of all time is Taylor Jenkins Reid. I haven't read her entire backlist, but the first book that I read from her was Carrie Soto is Back, which is basically a story about a tennis player. Again, I know nothing about tennis, but I was thoroughly entertained throughout this entire book. And basically, she was like the best of her time. And when she is basically in retirement, this new up-and-coming player is basically almost about to break her record. And so she comes out of retirement and basically is trying to protect her title. It is just such a bingeable story. I'm pretty sure I read this whole book within a day. And it was just such an interesting story to read about. I also really loved Malibu Rising by her, which I read at the beginning of this year, which basically follows these four siblings and their famous father. And it just follows their upbringing and story of a party that they throw and how everything gets out of control. But it was very interesting story. And then of course, I also love Daisy Jones and the Six. This book is kind of told in a screenplay format, and it basically follows the rise and fall of the band Daisy Jones and the Six. They're kind of reflecting on their time together as a band years later, after a big breakup they had, and it was just such a interesting story. They did make a show out of it, but I know that the show is pretty different from the book itself. I highly recommend reading the book. It was very easy to read because it is in that just kind of simple dialogue format. But it is a very emotional book where it just kind of pulls at your heartstrings sometimes. But I just think that Taylor Jenkins Reid is such an amazing writer. I am very excited to read more books from her. I have read a couple of her backlist books. I also do love One True Loves from her as well, which is kind of a love story in a way. It really makes you think. That one. And my last favorite fiction book is The Favorites by Lane Fargo. I read this book at the beginning of the year, and this follows two ice dancers. It is very dramatic. It follows a very cutthroat woman who will do anything to achieve her goals. It is messy, it is dramatic, it is toxic, but a very entertaining story that I loved. And the last genre is mystery thriller. I don't have too many books for this just because I haven't really read too many books from this genre. The first kind of thriller is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This is the only book that I have read from Riley Sager. It basically follows this caregiver as she is assigned this patient to take care of as she is kind of nearing the end of her life, but supposedly this old woman has killed her entire family. You're in this secluded house on the very edge of a cliff, and she's almost kind of unraveling certain things about this woman's life. Wasn't too creepy because I don't really like scary books or scary things like that, but it was very entertaining. It had me on the edge of my seat and I really enjoyed it. And then the last kind of mystery thriller type of book, if you can even consider it that, it might also be a little bit sci-fi, is The Library at Mount Char. This book is very weird, very disturbing at times, but it basically follows our main character, Caroline, as her adoptive father is basically kind of like a god in this world. And Caroline and her siblings were kind of adopted by him, and they were each raised within this magical library where they were each given a catalog that they had to master. And so Caroline's category is, I believe, languages, where she can speak any language. She's just a master at all of them. But there are some that deal with speaking with animals, war. I don't remember what all of them were, but her siblings are basically come together and are trying to find out where their father has gone. Their father has gone missing. This book is very odd. It's a little bit disturbing. It was such an intriguing and different story that I was so drawn in and just constantly wanting to know what was going to happen and what was going on. It was very interesting, but I really enjoyed it and I think about it a lot still. Those conclude all of my favorite books. I truly love these books so much, but just because I like them doesn't mean you'll like them. We all have different tastes, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you maybe were able to find some new recommendations. I feel like all these books are pretty popular, so maybe not, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite books are in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!